And welcome, and thank you for joining us on Rogers TV. Our debate today is in the riding of Ottawa-Vanier. In just a moment, I'll introduce you to our candidates seeking your vote in the February 27th by-election. But first, I will explain the rules for the debate today. Each of the candidates will be provided 1 minute for their opening statement. The order for those opening statements were drawn just before the start of this telecast at random. Each of the candidates will then be provided 1 minute to give you an opening statement. Once the opening statements are complete, we'll proceed into a series of debates and discussions about the important issues in the riding of Ottawa-Vanier. To start off each section of the discussion, I will direct a question to one of the candidates. They will then have 45 seconds to respond to that question, and then we'll open it up to several minutes of debate amongst all the candidates. And at the end of the debate, we'll go back to the candidate whom the question was originally directed, and then they will have 30 seconds to wrap up on that topic. We'll move through 6-7 different topics that way, and then we'll close off our debate with the closing statements in the order reversal of the opening statements from today. But first, let's introduce you to the candidates who are running in the February 27th by-election in Ottawa-Vanier. Running as an independent, Julie Fiala.
Quickly.
The Ontario Liberal Party, Lucille Collard. From the None of the Above Democracy Party, above Znoneofthe.
I'm back.
From the Green Party of Ontario, Benko Sworsky.
Hello.
Representing the Ontario Libertarian Party, Ken Lewis.
Hello, everyone.
And from the Ontario NDP, Miriam, Djilane. So welcome all of you, and thank you for joining us for this debate today on Rogers TV. We'll begin with our opening statements. Lucille, you will have 1 minute.
Was chosen second,
yes.
Not me to interfere with
Oh,
the
I'm sorry,
process,
yes. Julie Fiala, running as
Yes.
independent. You will go first.
Bonjour, quickly. I'd like to acknowledge first that we're standing on Anishinaabe unceded territory. Bonjour. Ashkanonia Ishies, it means I come in peace. Is your heart good? Ottawa-Vanier is an incredibly contested territory. I feel that on our streets, issues such as homelessness, housing security, food security, but also education are daily concerns. I want to raise awareness of issues such as healing and pain, community and child violence, education and ignorance, unity and division, imagination and the status quo, rights and discrimination. And I think as a last statement, I'd like to say that time is always now and that we can make change. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. And up next from the Ontario Liberal Party, Lucille Collard.
Bonjour, merci. I would like to thank Rogers for allowing this opportunity for the candidates to present themselves. I think it's important in democracy. I'm your Liberal candidate. My name is Lucille Collard. The reason I'm running is because I've chosen Ottawa-Vanier to be my home. That's also where I chose to raise my 4 children. Because of my Francophone roots, but also because it is a caring community. And I know today that I made the right choice. I want to bring my experience to Queen's Parks from 35 years as a public servant, as a school trustee, and also as a lawyer. I believe I can be the strong voice that Ottawa-Vanier deserve for Queen's Park and for our whole community. Thank you.
Thank you. And next from None of the Above Democracy Party, above Znoneofthe.
Thank you. Well, I am back again, and I hope that you remember me from the last time I ran here. And I would just like to say I told you so. I said you should vote for me then, and I'm saying you should vote for me now. The Direct Democracy Party has 3 R's of responsible government, referendum, and recall legislation. So we believe in making a big difference with individual candidates who can speak their own mind and not be controlled by party whips. So if I am your representative, I will represent you. I'd like to also point out the person who is not here is the Conservative candidate. So he's not even listening to you now in the debate. How can you think that he will listen to you later if he gets your vote? Don't forget, if you've watched, Doug Ford is off kissing up to Donald Trump. And keep in mind that that's the kind of games that they will play. You need to hold them accountable now. And everyone needs to not make the mistake that Americans made and show up and vote every time you can. So every one of you, get out and vote and show them that you're paying attention and you're watching, so they can't get away with anything.
Thank you. And next from the Green Party of Ontario, Benko Sworsky.
Hello, bonjour. I'm Benko Sworsky, and I'm running to be your second Green Party representative in Queen's Park. I'm a civil engineer and city planner, and I've been working in the community for the past 3 years in a beautiful office in Ottawa-Vanier. I'm running to represent Ottawa-Vanier because the issues that matter to our community are the issues that matter to me. We have significant challenges around homelessness. We haven't been able to find a housing solution that works for the people that need it the most. And many of the houses that we do have are starting to get old. They're expensive to heat. We also have issues around transit. We have an underperforming transit system, and the province really needs to step up and make sure that we have the money we need to invest in affordable housing, sustainable communities, and transit. The climate and the environment have always been the core of what the Greens believe in, but we have a complete platform that touches on education, that has a strong approach on healthcare, and I hope that you'll vote for me as your representative for the Green Party and for Ottawa-Vanier.
Next is Ken Lewis from the Ontario Libertarian Party.
Hi, thank you. I want to thank Rogers, first of all, for giving every candidate here a voice so that we can be heard. My name is Ken Lewis, and I'm your Libertarian candidate for Ottawa-Vanier. I was born literally into the riding at the Montfort Hospital. I grew up in Overbrook and then lived around the Bathgate area. In my mid-20s, I decided it's time to get out and see what the road is all about. I ended up working in Germany alongside our great soldiers as a civilian. It was during my travels I was able to see how foreign governments work. Some for the good for the people, and how it worked against the people. Since my return in 2008, I've owned and operate my own business. I want a better Ontario for everyone. This is why I stand in front of you today as a concerned citizen wanting to bring better choice to the people of Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Miriam Djilane from the Ontario NDP.
Hello, my name is Miriam Djilane, and I am proud to be running to be your MPP for Ottawa-Vanier. I'm a proud Franco-Ontarian and the daughter of an immigrant. I was raised in Sandy Hill. This is my home, and I want to see it improve and thrive. It is clear that in the last years, government lacked compassion and equality. We must do things differently. This is why I'm running, to fight for the change that our community deserves. Like many in Ottawa-Vanier, I am frustrated with Liberal and Conservative governments that have represented us. I have heard it at the doors. People are tired of being taken for granted. We are seeing cuts in our education, in our health care, in our senior care, and people are just not able to keep up with the rising cost of living. Instead of making life more affordable for you, Ford's Conservatives are working for his insider buddies. This is wrong. You deserve much better. As your MPP, I will be holding the Ford government accountable for their policies. That is why I stand here today asking for your vote.
Thank you. We have 6 candidates here today. The 7th candidate, Patrick Myangi from the Progressive Conservatives, is not attending today's debate. So I thank you all for your opening statements. We're going to move into some of the debates now and the important topics in this by-election. And we're going to start with Julie Fiala, who's running as an independent. 1 in 5 Ontario residents, they're struggling with a mental illness. What can be done to provide help to these people and to their families?
Yes, I think there's many ways that this can be addressed, but first I would suggest that we look at the institutions we already have. The Montfort Hospital, for example, is a great resource. I know that they even provide services for veterans. They are very involved with the military as well, and they have both an inpatient and an outpatient unit. There are a number of programs. We also have, the Montfort established a program called Renaissance, and that program, Renaissance Montfort, is also very much involved in outreach work. So there are both hospital programs, but as well as many outreach satellite programs in the community that I am aware of that actually very much provide these resources. So I think we need to bring awareness of these programs because Ottawa-Vanier has many of them.
Thank you, Julie. We'll now open it up for debate amongst all the candidates.
Yes. I think that investing in our healthcare, whether it's mental health care or other care, is showing the people that we care about our community. And right now, that's not what we've seen. And I do appreciate what Julie has been saying. We do need to increase on those programs. And unfortunately, the Conservative government has done everything, but helping with all these cuts. So I think it's very important that taxpayers' money needs to be put towards very much needed services. That's what they expect, and that's why they're so frustrated right now.
Well, currently with the our healthcare system, the tax dollar, which is budget's about $50 billion, it's 50-50 with the upper levels of management. We have 5 levels of management. any business out there will run at about an 85% front cost and 15% managing cost, not at a 50-50. We have to get that money into the system so that we can provide more care, mental health, whatever we need. Every community is different. Vanier, Ottawa-Vanier, we do have a high mental health issue that needs to be looked at. But we have to have the money into the people, not into the management of the healthcare system. Let's get rid of this 5 levels of management and get the money directly to the LHINs, but they know what the community needs.
And I'll say that you have to have better use of the money that you have there. You don't always have to throw more money at a problem. That's been a solution or an attempted a solution in the past and it hasn't worked. What you have to do is, and plenty of people have the answers. The people on the front lines tell you the ideas to fix things. They see the problems every day, but the people up top don't listen. I will listen. I am in favor of new ideas and I would listen to that so you make better use of the money you have and get to help people earlier in the process instead of waiting until things get to the worst division until they wind up in the emergency room. Help them before they cost us even more money in the emergency level.
We need to take a people-centric approach when we consider our approach to addictions and mental health issues. Oftentimes we hear about institutional responses, but what we really need to start doing is caring for the individuals that are faced with these issues. And one easy way to get started is stop charging HST on private visits to healthcare providers. If you're going out seeking a psychologist or psychological help, there's no reason why you should be paying tax on top of that. Another thing that we could be doing to improve our frontline healthcare services is make sure that qualified nurse practitioners are available to provide services in parts of the community that need immediate attention. Healthcare, in my opinion, is closely linked to the opioids crisis currently that's facing Ontario. If we really want to get serious about tackling mental health and getting people off of addictions, we need to really consider whole life support, making sure that the things that are causing stressors and leading people to get into cycles of addiction and other mental health issues get support through a housing-first housing strategy that makes sure that people have a comfortable place to live so that they can really start building their lives in addition with healthcare support, but building their lives much more holistically and getting ahead for themselves.
I'd also like to point out, I definitely agree with Ben and as well with Ken, that we need to start listening to healthcare workers because they're at the front line, they know what the issues are. But I think at the very core of all of this, we need to remember that we need to treat everybody, no matter their circumstances in life, with dignity and respect, because that is something that every single Canadian and every single Ontarian deserves. I would also like to point out, however, that the Conservative government has set us up poorly, and they are failing our Canadians here. However, the Liberals laid the groundwork for that. That did not just come out of nowhere. The Ford Conservatives are hacking at our healthcare, but there was a road paved right ahead for them, which is something that we will be working to rebuild, and we will be working on rebuilding our healthcare and ensuring that mental health is something that is addressed outside of our healthcare needs as well.
And I don't think the privatization is the right answer. You'll hear from other people, oh, if the government can't handle it, then we'll just outsource it. I think that that's a false flag. I think that some people would like certain companies to make certain money, and certain friends who have certain companies would like to make money off of it. We've been doing an amazing job with our healthcare so far. It needs to be tweaked. It needs to be improved. It does not need to be privatized.
And I think also that mental health is closely linked to the problem we have with poverty. We need to help those people, but we need to come up with sustainable solution. So yes, they need the care, but we need to look at a way to invest that will lead some concrete positive results. So not just investing in putting services forward, but making sure we do an investment with sustainable solution that will show a concrete result so that we are alleviating the problem, that we are addressing it and not just patching it.
Yes, I think there's the issue also of missing and murdered Indigenous women and a lot of issues which, as Lucie mentioned, poverty and issues of marginalization of race, they intersect in very complex ways. So when we're dealing with mental health, we have to consider the holistic picture of the individual, as many of you mentioned, but I think these are issues also of power and privilege. So at the end of the day, we need to look at Ottawa-Vanier for what it is and for the people that live there and for the specificity of their concerns.
But we need to give people the choice too. We need to legalize systems so that they can go to other services when it's available and not force them into one system.
Takes us to the end of that debate, but Julie, you do have the final 30 seconds just to wrap up the topic on health.
Yes. I think so. First, there are many resources that are actually available in Ottawa-Vanier. It's an area that is rich in resources, but also the legacy and also the ways in which la circonscription, has been run, has meant that we've had both conservative leaders, but also liberal leaders, paving the way for the kind of situation that we see now, which is actually atrocious, horrible, and needs change.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to our next question. This will be for the Ontario Liberal Party, Lucille Collard. As rents skyrocket, vacancy rates plummet, low and moderate income tenants are facing an affordability crisis that is pricing them out of their communities. As an MPP for Ottawa-Vanier, what would you and your party do to protect low-income tenants?
First of all, we need to make sure that we collaborate with all levels of government. There is no issues in the riding that is, closed by jurisdiction. We need to collaborate with all levels of government. And that's what I've been doing actually as a school trustee for the last 20 years. I've established good relationship with our elected officials and we've worked on solutions together. So I think it requires a great deal of a collaboration, but also a great deal of consultation. Because in order to be able to address the issue, we need to understand it. So we need concrete data. We need to consult the people and see where the problems are in order to build sustainable solution in short term and longer term as well.
And we'll open it up for debate.
Collaboration and consultation won't solve our housing crisis. Collaboration and consultation are what the Liberal Party of Ontario has been promising for years. What we need is more houses. The bottom line is there's a housing shortage in our community. We need to make sure that we have more houses and that we have more affordable houses so that everybody in our community can afford a decent place to live. The Green strategy is hinged on making sure that the new houses that we build are sustainable and affordable. So we would be able to provide support for housing builders and cooperatives and nonprofit housing associations to actually increase the number of housing units that are available in our community. Good quality housing units that people want to live in and want to continue living in to build great lives for themselves and help to build up our communities. Collaboration and consultation is important, and we definitely do need to work with the powers that exist in our community and across the province. But the bottom line is we need to set our sights on building houses that are livable, affordable, and sustainable.
One of the things that I like right now that the federal government is doing right is providing 10% towards the purchase price of a house. So that is helping families with the affordability of their homes. I think the provincial government could step in as well. You're making an investment in something that is going to hold its value, and we're not buying 80 or 90% of the house like a mortgage. We're only purchasing 10 or 20%, and we're actually getting that money back. I think that that's a key point that the provincial government should be doing more of when it gives money to corporations, when it invests money, that it gets something of value, that it can get that money back so it can use it to help more people later, rather than just granting money and giving it away. And also, when we're talking about building the homes, I think the government should be helping developers get through the process to build the homes and not getting in the way and blocking them. If we have to get a few people as concierge service people to help the developers work their way through the government process, I'll personally help them out as well. And we can have a few units set aside for affordable housing in every development that they want to make.
Okay, I think the issue of housing is a huge one, but we're forgetting that Ottawa has just declared an emergency housing situation. On any given night in Ottawa, there are 1,000 people on the streets. I'm sorry. I am concerned with their lives. This is about dignity. This is about survival. This intersects with issues of mental health, but why? I'm sorry, why aren't people concerned? Why aren't any of you bringing up the issues that actually some people are in serious pain, they're suffering? I would really hope for more empathy on this panel.
We do need to act now. Like, the homelessness is a crisis. We need to address it head on, and we need some solutions right now. I want to speak briefly about the shelter that's been proposed for Montreal Road, because I don't think that's a solution. I do understand that people need a place to live, but a shelter for 300 beds for men only? What is this? What about families? What about women? Why weren't the people of Ottawa-Vanier consulted on this project that would have a major impact on the community, and I certainly hope it's not going to go forward. So we do need to work head on. We need to form a task force right now and get some concrete solution off the ground, and to make sure that none of those people are left on the street in the freezing cold.
We also have the issue of too many government regulations. I can give you examples. Look in London, Ontario, there was a tent city built by the church to get the people, the homeless, off the streets into heated shelter for the winter. It wasn't part of the bylaw, it was taken down. The Ontario Libertarian Party actually went to City Council to fight to get up a non-profit organization so that we can get a tent city and a caravan city set up to get these people off the street, especially in the winter months. We were given an extension of 6 months to get these people in and get this all set up. But if the government keeps coming in and shutting down these places and throwing these people back on the streets, this does not help anybody. We need to get the government off and the government working behind the people to get them off the streets and get them into the house. How do we get them in the house? They need more money and we need cheaper housing. How do we do that? Again, government regulations. When the government's taking half of your money in taxes and charging to build a house nowadays, 50% of the cost is taxes for the government. We have to reduce that so housing becomes more affordable, and we have to get more people more money in your pocket so that you can afford housing.
I'd like to go back to the point of empathy, because empathy is what we are lacking in politics. Ben made a very good point that, Ben as well as Julie, that the actual root of this is poverty. And we need to start addressing what are the causes of poverty and not tackling one issue at a time: housing, healthcare, mental health. We need to realize that this is all inclusive and all these issues work hand in hand. And if we work on one of them at a time, we're not actually solving anything. And the main thing is, if you've ever been in an Ottawa community housing, the majority of them, yes, you have a roof over your head. Are you thriving? You are not. We need to start improving the quality. That's really what it is. We need to add more and build more affordable housing, but we need to ensure that the quality of the housing goes along with that, because we don't just want a shack for people to live in. We want people to be able to thrive where they live.
Thank you. And Lucille, you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up this topic.
Yeah, I think it's been made very clear throughout our conversations that, money is actually one of the issue. So I think we really need to look at attracting investors and look at different types of models of homes. So affordable housing is not the same for everyone. So we need to look at different models that would work for the different situation. And we need to work with the people of the community and the leaders in the community to be able to work that plan out.
Thank you. And moving on to our next question from None of the Above Democracy Party, above Znoneofthe. We're going to talk about education. It'll be another week of needing a scorecard to keep up with the current teacher strikes. They've been without a contract since August. We've heard about salaries and an increase of 1%. We've also heard about class sizes, special needs. There's a lot at the table right now between the union and the province. What would you like to see done to support kids with special needs and their families?
Yes, thank you very much. Well, kids with special needs, they need their assistance in the classroom. A teacher has so many students they have to deal with, and they can't give that individual time and attention to students with special needs. I know from the situation with my own kids in their classrooms that they say the teacher is overwhelmed and doesn't have enough time. They need the ECEs and the assistants to have the time to help that student, to give them the focus and the attention to help them thrive. They cannot do well in school if they don't have the attention to help them learn the lesson. So then it's just daycare or babysitting while they're sitting there watching all the other students get ahead and they're falling further behind, which can't be good for them and is not good for their future. So we do need to maintain the assistance in the classroom, and to do that, we need to listen to the teachers who say you need to keep the class sizes where they are.
Now let's open it up for discussion amongst all the candidates.
Currently in Ontario, we have a one-size-fits-all policy. We send the students all to school depending on where they live, what religion they believe in, and if they want English or French. We at the Ontario Libertarian Party, we believe the funding should be attached to the student, and the parents and the student should decide. So if you have a special case where you need special needs, if somebody accelerates in math or whatever, you can direct that the way you want. Currently, we have a 62-38 ratio. So 62% goes to bureaucracy and 38% goes to the actual education of the student. That needs to be changed again. It's top level. We have to put this money into the students. According to Fraser Institute, each student, it's $12,300 per year. We will give you a voucher so that you and your child can discuss what's best for them, whether it's special needs, advanced education, or just a simple normal education like most of us received. But it's your choice, not the government's choice, because this one-size-fits-all policy does not work.
I'd like to be clear here about the teacher situation. Teachers deserve our support. Teachers are the most important people in our society because they are building, through education, our society of tomorrow. So they need all the resources that they need, and they need them now. And I don't understand the government position right now. If I always say the education is the root of our society. If you want to see a tree grow, you don't cut the roots. That's just as simple. The inability of the Ford government to recognize the values of our teacher is a disgrace. And simply, it's unfair to give them more responsibility, to increase their burden without giving them the proper support. And I've heard that, like on the door, speaking to teachers, like how their job is just becoming impossible. So we need to do more, and we need to respect them, and we need just to give them the resources that they need.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Lucie on that point. Teachers are absolutely, they're the structure, they're the foundation on which a great, strong community can be built. And I also think that it's not just a matter of teachers, it's a matter of education more generally as a way to understand and to reinvent and to reimagine and to create new conditions for ourselves. When you give people skills, you create the possibilities for change. And I think we need to think about education as in terms of elementary, secondary, but also higher education. And I think, especially in relation to Ottawa-Vanier, we have, again, a great, La Cité Collégiale, a great college right in our community, and we need to invest more in it, for example, and also promote new models and new ways to learn.
I'd like to point out something, go back to the topic that Mark had mentioned, specifically about special education. I would like to share a story with you. I was at the picket line at Queen Elizabeth School, where I chatted with a teacher who had a class of special needs children. She had a class size of 6, as well as with an education assistant. How she talked about her students and how difficult it was already with two adults to 6 children who all have varying needs, who all have different attention spans. And the fear in her eyes when she talked about what a bigger classroom size would look like, when 6 was already very difficult to manage. Mm-hmm. And this woman was standing in the cold, away from her own children, because she could not bring her children in the cold, to talk about and to stand up for our children's educations. And I think we need to remember that. We need to remember that those teachers are fighting for our children. And I am so proud as an Ontarian to say that I've seen so much support for the teachers in this strike, and that is what the Ford government should be looking at. The support that the community is offering to the teachers should show that they are in the wrong.
Our teachers are taking a stand for our kids. They're taking a stand for education. They believe in the quality of the education services they provide, and they don't want to see that quality slipping away. Doug Ford calls himself a businessman. Well, if you really are a businessman, think about the investment that you're making in the future. Think about the investment that you're pulling from the future when you pull funding from our schools. We need well-resourced classrooms so that we have first of all, a great life to grow up in, but eventually become a contributing member of the workforce. Eventually, you will be a really important member of Ontario society, and if we pull resources from you at the early stage, you're not going to be able to grow up and become, as great as you possibly can be. For me, that also includes extra support, including school psychologists and counselors. We're seeing an alarming rise in anxiety and depression among students in high school and in middle school as well. And so if we are serious about making sure that we're providing good quality education, we need to make sure that our additional services are available in schools as well.
And thank you very much. Above you, we'll have 30 seconds to wrap up this topic for us.
Thank you very much. Well, when it comes to the education, keep in mind as well that we're in the middle of this teacher strike because the current government wants to fight with teachers, not work with them. They say they just want to fight with the union, but we've seen these ads that came out recently, and some people have said it's because of this by-election right here to help influence people towards the government's position. Although I don't see the Conservative candidate here to answer to that. But I will just say that they almost had a deal, apparently, and they didn't have it. So it looks like they wanted to keep fighting and keep it going because they think saving $12 million per day is good business.
And thank you. And
But
that's
it's not.
all the time we have. Moving on to Benko Sworsky from the Green Party of Ontario. Throughout last year, activists pushed the climate crisis to the forefront of public consciousness around the world. Also last year also brought a lot of changes to Ontario, with the Progressive Conservative government taking a controversial approach to climate policies. How is the Green Party's climate plan different from the PC's?
I'm extremely encouraged by the activism that we saw last year and that we've continued to see as we get into 2020. I was there with hundreds of thousands of people marching in the streets to make decisive action on climate. Ultimately, we've been hearing climate promises for the past 30 years from the major parties, and nobody's been taking decisive action. The reason why I decided to run as a Green Party candidate is that it's the only party that puts the climate at the core and the environment at the core. For me, making a positive change on the climate means investing in the future. Ontario has a great deal of growth to do in the sustainable economy sector. We can get great green jobs that are caring jobs in sustainable industry, potentially a made-in-Ontario electric vehicle. Grow our economy while growing the environment is totally possible. BC's proven it. Let's do it here.
All right, and let's open it up to a discussion amongst all candidates.
I think in that issue, we need to remember that it's about the self. What do you do, or what do I do every day to contribute to these issues of environmental sustainability, ecological citizenship? Myself, I ride my bicycle every day, even during the winter days. And when people ask you, how do you do that? I say, well, je suis de la place. I'm from here, and people in our community understand what we need to survive. So I would challenge all of you to bike one day this winter.
Yeah,
In my
actually, this is, I like that comment because I'm not doing it myself, but my husband has been doing it every day. He's got himself 3 different bikes to address different kind of temperature. I'm really proud of him, but not my cup of tea. But at the same time, I think that everybody can do something. Individually, we can do what we can, whether it's reuse or recycle. You can go bolder if you want to. We decided to put solar panels on our house to show our kids that there were alternative way of doing things. And of course, I've got my 4 kids every day to remind me how important it is for us to preserve their future. So we need to be part of the solution, not only individually, but also to make sure that we create incentives for the industry to participate to the solution so that they invest in greener technologies and greener practices to make a difference for all of us.
And I think you need to consider the effects of climate change in advance. There have always been forest fires, and they've been getting worse right here in Ontario every year. If you know there's going to be a forest fire season and you know it can be worse, then you need to plan now to cut out fire breaks, to have pre-stationed water supplies, and to be ready to put those fires out as quickly as possible instead of winding up with a situation like you see in Australia. And I'm proud that we are helping them in Australia right now, because you can say that's over there, that doesn't affect us, but it does. That additional carbon goes into the air and affects the temperature for the entire planet. So it's not just a you problem or me problem, it's an us problem. We all need to think of ways to work together to help solve the problem for all of our sake.
It's true, though. Everybody, every individual has the right, but we also have to put the onus of where is the major pollution, where is the major problem. It's not with me, the individual, or you, the individual. It's higher up. And by us sitting here, yes, it's great that I use my green bin, I use my recycling every day. I do the best I can for the environment. But if we're not actually looking at reducing it from the top down, what effect are we actually having? We take a look, the major polluter in the world right now is China. And what do? BC still sells coal to China. They're blocking the pipeline so that we can get coal to China. So this is where we have to start. We have to start at the top and work our way down without forgetting our individual contributions.
I would care to disagree, because I think in the world everything starts from the bottom up. I think if we hold ourselves accountable, then we push the people, the corporations that we interact with, to hold themselves accountable, and that is how we slowly push our government. But we have to start at the bottom. It has to be people-powered in order to make some change. And on Ben's point, I just wanted to say, I think many parties right now talk about our financial future and our economic future, but I think that they forget that we don't have an economic future if we don't take care of our environment. We don't, so many young people like myself, consider the environment in whether we want to have children or not. That is something that no generation prior to ours ever had to consider.
Yes, education is a major issue on this in relation to climate change. I mean, I completely disagree with the ideas of focusing on China and focusing on these kind of issues. I mean, I have lived and worked in India. These people have great models, but but it's about the individual. It's about making changes and about educating and about having a consciousness about what it means to live now. I'm sorry, nobody mentioned Fort McMurray, I don't think. These issues are, Alberta is far closer to Ontario than Australia. So I think the issues are right in our front yard, not in our, they're very close to us.
Yeah, and I think it's also very important that really touches a point, when we listen to our children, wondering about making a choice about having children or not based on whether they think they're going to have a real future. And I think that's one of the reasons we need to listen to them. Like, we don't have all the science, but we know that the youth is actually very concerned with it, and they have great ideas. We need to make sure that we have a forum to listen to them, and I want to create a youth council so that we have their voice and that we can listen to their ideas, because I've had conversation with my kids, and I'm always astonished to see that they have even better ideas than I do. The other class of people that we need to listen to is the Aboriginal or the Indigenous. They respect the environment. It's part of their culture. It's part of who they are. And I think we also need to bring them at the table and give them a voice to listen to them. Again, it's about collaboration and bringing people together around interest to be able to build a sustainable solution and make a difference together.
Okay, Ben, you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up this topic for us.
I bike to work, I recycle. I do all of the individual mandate things that you possibly can do to live a sustainable lifestyle. But global emissions are still skyrocketing. The individual mandate, it's beautiful to believe in, and we all do need to play our part, but eventually we need to make systemic change. We need to just stop investing in activities that create increases in emissions. Ultimately, we know how to do it. It's just a question of dedicating our resources to sustainable economy.
Thank you. Moving on to Ken Lewis, Ontario Libertarian Party. This question will be for you. Given the issues surrounding the problem-plagued light rail system that we have here in Ottawa, we know that the Ford government has said that they're watching very closely what's going on here, not just phase 1 but phase 2, and that brings us to this question. Do you support providing funding to phase 3 of light rail that would extend the system further west to Canada?
Well, first of all, we have to hold all levels of government here accountable for this disaster what we have here in Ottawa with the LRT. First of all, it started with the City of Ottawa accepting a system that was not ready to be handed over to the public. They had a system in check, 12 days of consecutive testing before they do it, before they take ownership of this. They only went to 9 days. The system failed. They started again. It never even reached the 9-day period. And they said, you know what? We have to get people on this system, so we're taking ownership of this. All funding should be stopped immediately. We should find out what's wrong with this system, get it up, working proper before we do anything else for the phase 2 or phase 3.
And we'll open it up for everyone's...
I think that a big problem is something that you see too often with government. It's form over function. If government would take the time to properly vet things and make sure that it's tested before they announce it, then things would work properly once they release it. But they want to get the news story, they want to get elected the next time, they want to catch the latest news cycle and say, look what we did, we brought it in for you. And that mistake causes them to override the voices of the people who are doing the work on the ground. The people who are going to be the conductors and will say, check the doors. The people who would say, don't put this train in service yet. And they say, well, we have to because it has to look good. The worst example I've seen of that so far in the last several years was in the States with the new high-speed rail, where they pushed it out and they pushed it too fast around the corner and had a major disaster because they pushed that rail and said it has to get to the station on time. It's the first train and we've got to get it on time. And that kind of thinking is political and not functional. And that is a huge mistake. And if I get in, if I'm elected, I will make sure that the Ontario government does not get away with making those mistakes for the next 2 years.
I'd like to point out that Ottawa-Vanier is actually the riding with the most station of LRT, but yet we're not served by the service. That's absolutely astonishing. We do have a public transportation in Ottawa-Vanier and in Ottawa generally, I'd like to say, that needs to be fixed. We need a public transportation that's efficient, that's accessible, and that's affordable. Vanier, for example, is a mere 5 kilometers from downtown, but yet it's a struggle to get to our job in a reasonable time. So what's the problem? We need to look at different ways. We need to look at investing maybe in different solutions, and we need to do that like really now. And collaboration with the city will be really key into finding those new solutions. So we need to consult the people to see where are the major irritants, where are the issues, why are people not getting service? My kids live 2 kilometers from school. They have to take 2 buses and wait 20 minutes to get there. It just doesn't make sense. So we definitely need to do better on this.
Yes, I think it's also about the users, the public transport, the clients. I'm sorry to use this term in this sense, but at the end of the day, have you been on the number 12 bus?
Yep.
I use it. I have used it. I remember it when it was the number 2 bus.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, this line is problematic. This is the main artery, you know, in relation to Montreal Road, in relation to Ottawa-Vanier. And, you know, the LRT, we have it up Blair and we have it coming in at Rideau, but at the end and throughout the area. But that number 12 line, I think, needs to be addressed and looked at very closely because there's issues of homelessness, violence. This is a very, very problematic line. I mean, even the security of the workers themselves, the bus drivers, let's think about their lives too. So I think that these are some of the issues. The workers, it's a very hard line, and it is a very hard line.
It's also very important, to remind Ford that people outside of the GTA also use transit. And we need to stop talking about solely the GTA when we talk about a good transit system. This is the LRT in Ottawa is a perfect example of a private-public combination that is not working. It is not a solution. We need to keep our public transit public. It is public funds, and we should be able to hold companies accountable for what they are doing with our public funds.
The O train was a missed opportunity for Ottawa-Vanier. The fact that they decided to route it around the riding instead of through the riding gives expediency for some kinds of services, but ultimately it doesn't provide service to the people that need it the most. And it's absolutely true that Route 12 is underinvested in. We need to make sure that the transit that does serve the riding serves the needs of the community and that people can get through our neighborhoods quickly and get to where they need to be and instead of spending their entire day waiting for the bus or sitting on a slow-moving bus. I use Route 12. I know how it feels. The city is about to reinvest in Montreal Road. Let's make sure that some of that investment goes to transit as well.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we can do, as I was getting my signatures for this by-election, I talked to some cab drivers, and they said that they're having a very hard time competing with Uber. One of the things that you can do is called microtransit, where you bring in the smaller vehicles as part of the transit system. The transit system will reimburse them for rides, and when you only have 2 or 3 people on a particular route, they will bring in an Uber or a taxi to pick those people up, just as if they're a bus, but they're not using up all of the space and all the size, and get them to their destination. So that's good for the environment, good for employment for those people, good for time and for transit, and it's a win-win all around.
Yeah, an issue we're forgetting is paratranspo and disability and people who have mobility and access issues. I think that needs to be addressed in general, by our transport system, our public transport system. And yes, I just want to leave that.
Yeah, and I think that just to close that, you know, part of our public transportation could also be to improve our cycling path. I think people would use them more if they were more secure. There would be more of that, and that, you know, we could actually rely on that. I've actually chosen to walk instead of taking the 12 because it actually brings me there faster, maybe because I've got long legs, but seriously, let's do something about that.
Okay, and we'll give Ken 30 seconds to wrap up this topic.
So to bring us back to the original question on LRT, as I said before, we have to hold the government accountable for their actions and their decisions, especially the LRT Phase 2 right now. It's not even started, the construction, and yet we have a discrepancy with one of the builders, SNC Lav, which I believe everybody knows this company, did not pass the technical standards of what we set forward, but yet they were awarded the contract. This is the type of thing that we have to hold all levels of government accountable for.
Thank you, Ken. Moving on now to Miriam Djilane. This is from the Ontario NDP. The question is for you. Success in education is strongly still related to demographics. If you live below the poverty line, racialized, or you come from a family with less education, you could be less likely to succeed in school, and even for some kids, difficulty to graduate. What is your party doing to address this?
Well, I will talk about one thing in particular is OSAP and access to higher education. I come from a family of immigrants. I come from a family where we're clearly racialized, and our families fought very hard to be here. We wanted, our ancestors came here because they wanted better for our children. We often have very large families. My dad was one of 7. And who can afford to send 7 children to school? With Ford's cuts currently to OSAP, many people no longer afford to go to school. That's not acceptable. That's something we will change.
And we'll open it up for discussion.
Like I said before, when we talked about our education previously, I said, when we attach the funding to the actual student and not to the school or to the school board, the parent has the choice to send their child wherever they want to the school. They're not forced to send them to the community. If it's like Ottawa-Vanier, where lots of the schools are underperforming and all that, they can choose to take the child out and send them to another school or another school board, or even home educate them if that's the better choice for them. Everybody knows, I don't know what's best for your child or for your child, but I know what's best for my child. So why do I think the government knows best what's for my child? I should be making the decision and not the government, and that's why we want to attach the funding to the student so you can decide and not the government.
Yeah, sorry.
The original question was about diversity and inclusion in our education system. And I think that the approach proposed by our Libertarian candidate goes completely against the idea that we have a free, accessible public education that serves everyone's needs. What we need to be investing in is well-resourced classrooms that serve the needs of the diversity of students across this province. We need to make sure that every school provides the same quality of education as every other school, so that parents don't have to make choices about where to send their children. They know that the public education is the education that serves them the best. And if they do choose to send their kids to other programs, that's absolutely acceptable. But we need to make sure that our public primary and secondary education system is well funded, and ultimately that we have great options for post-secondary education as well. We need to be investing in trade schools to make sure that people who have skills that are not necessarily focused on our universities have access to great programs. We need to make sure that our universities are well invested in, and that money is not a barrier to getting post-secondary education. If you're ready to invest in your own future, the province should be supporting you. We should be making sure that you have the resources you need to get the degree or the qualification that you're looking for so that you can live a great life with the basis of a great education.
Exactly. We should be increasing OSAP, not cutting it back. What we should be doing as well, the government wants to put a bunch of online courses for students now as part of their requirement. You have to make sure that every student has access to the internet and a computer to take those online courses with. You can't make it a requirement of a course and then say they can't show up because they have to use dial-up or some other way to try and get online. Can you imagine trying to take any course these days with dial-up? You would be 50 before you'd finish your high school. We need to make sure that the resources are available if you're going to make it a requirement. We need to look ahead at the needs of Ontario. This is not save some money. This is looking to our future for our province and making investments that will benefit us.
Yes, the issue of dial-up is actually an issue of access. We've got to talk about access. Who can access education? Even some things like having a bus or a paratransport or a means of bringing, a yellow bus, a smaller. People have different needs in terms of even getting to their classrooms. I think we need to look at those needs, but obviously in terms of higher education, it does become a question of OSAP, but it's not that simple. I've really looked very closely at the ways that OSAP has changed in Ontario from the Wynne government to the Ford government, and the ways in which certain amounts of money that are given to students are now managed and categorized differently. So I think we need to look at also debt, issues of student debt. Those are huge issues, and how they're impacting young workers who are entering the workforce. I think that those are issues that also intersect with issues of access, issues of education, and diversity.
Yeah, speaking of diversity, I want to talk a little bit about our cultural diversity, which is actually an added value in our writing. We do have a large number of people that are adding to the richness of the writing by their culture. And I think that's very important, that all the communities need to be part of a plan for an inclusive economic growth. And that, of course, goes through access to education, most definitely. And education also that offers alternative teaching methods, because not everybody learns the same way. And a lot of it contributes, because we have one formula, contributes to stress and anxiety of the students. So we need to help them in that matter. But to go back to including, everyone in an economic growth plan, we need to make sure that everybody has access to training, that everybody has access to transportation, everybody has access to affordable housing, and lastly, that they can access the work market, because this is how you get out of poverty, that's how you contribute to your community, and that's also how your kids thrive. Because if you're thriving yourself as parents, you're showing the lead and you're doing well for your kids.
I think one way that you can do that is by encouraging more co-op programs. As part of the government, you can instantly make more co-op programs with the government, and you can encourage other companies to do that as well by providing some tax incentives and some support for the co-op program, perhaps some more credits for students at school as well. And that way they're getting the experience that they'll need when they get out of school, they're getting some funds from the co-op program, and our companies are benefiting from their youth and their ideas.
The Green Party also supports on-the-job training. We support small businesses to make investments in skills development. So we would definitely put in place policies that encourage on-the-job training for new apprentices and in the trades especially. One thing I wanted to mention about student debt, when the Greens were able to form a government in British Columbia, they immediately cancelled all interest on existing and future student debt. So huge relief for students who are carrying student debt loans.
And Miriam, you'll have the final 30 seconds to wrap up this topic.
I would just like to really focus on the fact that education at any level is a luxury. It should not be a luxury, excuse me. It is a right and not a privilege. Everybody should be starting on the same step. If we look at our riding, Ottawa-Vanier, and you look at schools in Rockcliffe and schools in Overbrook, they are not thriving in the same way. And obviously there are socioeconomic differences, but nobody should be starting at a lower step than anybody else, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their heritage.
And thank you very much. And that will bring us to the closing of our debate today. But we are going to move into closing statements. They'll begin in reverse order from the opening statements. So we will begin with Myriam Djilane from the Ontario NDP.
Fortunately, the Liberals have let us down time and time again. They have sold off Hydra 1, made cuts to our education, made cuts and froze hospital fundings. They have set the stage perfectly for Doug Ford's Conservatives to take it a step further and make life for Ontarians worse. In their short time in power, Ford's Conservatives have made even more cuts to our vital services, to our hospitals, to long-term care, public health, and cuts to our public education, which are being fought right now by our brave education staff. We don't have to pick between cuts and more cuts. On February 27th, vote for me and the NDP to elect a fighter, because that is what Ottawa-Vanier deserves.
Thank you. Moving on to the Ontario Libertarian Party and Ken Lewis.
The Libertarian Party of Ontario has a plan to offer you choice and return the power to the people. It is a lofty goal, but it is what each Libertarian believes in. Changing government overnight is not easy. But by giving the hard-working taxpayers of Ontario the choice and control, it can be done. We need your support for our ideas and our plans. We need your support to get our message out. We need the average Ontario resident to say enough is enough to ever tightening controls over our rights and to the never-ending revenue tools, also called taxes. Instead of more of the same, we need people of Ontario to send a message to the big three. We will give you what matters most: choice and freedom. Vote for less government, vote for more choice, vote Libertarian, libertarian.on.ca, or vote for Ken Lewis on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Benko Sworsky from the Green Party of Ontario.
The Ford government holds a majority in the provincial parliament. Ford has been systematically attacking our environmental and social protections, but he's shown that he's willing to back off. He backed off on the Greenbelt, and he actually had members of his party support the only opposition piece of legislation that's been passed through the Ontario Parliament, which was put forward by Mike Schreiner, the Green member, to protect parking spaces for EV vehicles. But it is the only piece of environmental legislation that's been getting through. If you care about Ottawa-Vanier and you care about the planet, the Green vote is the right vote. I care about the issues that matter to our community. We can make a difference for the environment right here. The individual mandate is important, but we need to invest in our houses. We need to invest in our transit. We need to invest in our public spaces to make sure that we create green, livable communities. At the provincial level, we need to invest in the sustainable economy. So I hope that you'll vote for me to be your representative in Queen's Park. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Up next above, Znoneofthe from the None of the Above Democracy Party.
Thank you very much. Well, it's not often that you get a second chance in life to fix something that might have gone differently, and this is your second chance, Ottawa-Vanier, to pick none of the above. You're not picking the premier in this election, you're not picking the government, you're picking your representative, who will speak up for you. As the None of the Above Direct Democracy Party candidate, I will be able to speak for your voice. I won't have a party telling me what to do, I won't have to go and toe the party line, I won't have a whip pushing me towards voting against your interest. I will be able to represent you at the provincial level. And one idea that I've had that I've been trying to push that will help us all is that I want to see Transport Canada in coordination with 911 emergency dispatchers, fire, ambulance, and police, so that when they get called to a scene, they can get a heads up if that person has been somewhere that's been quarantined, such as Wuhan province, so they know to put on the outfits before they go in and get something to spread it around. That's the kind of ideas you will get from None of the Above and Doug Ford. If you want to run the province like a business, that's fine, we can do that, but don't run it like deco labels. Run it like a good business.
And thank you. From the Ontario Liberal Party, Lucille Collard.
Thank you. Ottawa-Vanier wants and deserves a strong representation. My approach to working together with the people of Ottawa-Vanier is based on three values: collaboration, inclusion, and innovation. As your next MPP, I want to put forward a task force to work on affordable housing and poverty head-on. As your representative, I will make sure that our youth is being heard by creating a youth council. I want to continue to invest my time, my energy, and my experience for the community, as I've been doing for the last 20 years with positive results. I invite you to vote for me if you want a strong voice to represent the people of Ottawa-Vanier. I am a proud member of the Liberal Party, a party that is being reconstructed and renewed, and I want to continue to work towards that goal. So thank you. Merci, Meegwetch.
And running as an independent, Julie Fiala will have our last word.
Hello, I'm Dr. Julie Fiala. I'd just like to thank all the other candidates, and I'd like to thank Rogers as well. I just want to go back to some of the issues that are key to me. First, housing. Obviously, I think I've made myself clear on that. A bachelor apartment in Ottawa-Vanier cost $836. On Ontario Works, people receive $783. So I don't think I need to really express how that seems to be absolutely unreasonable and that needs changing. Another major issue is the issue of opioids. I think when we look at our streets, we can see that people are in pain. I think we need to somehow find a way to remove that pain. And yes, I'd just like to end by saying that Julie Fiala, Fiala means love. And I love Ottawa-Vanier, and I think we can make a change.
All right, thank you to all of our candidates for participating in today's debate for Ottawa-Vanier. The by-election will take place on Thursday, February 27th. Good luck to all of you, and thank you for watching.